Well, welcome to question 132 of the secundae. The topic for this lecture is vainglory, and I am Dr. Thibault. We are looking at the virtue of fortitude, the cardinal virtue of fortitude, and one of the parts of fortitude is magnanimity, which is the strengthening of the will and the mind, empowered by the emotions, to do great and noble things, to see great and noble things, and carry it out. And as we pointed out in the previous lectures, this is something which somebody has the ability to do. They do it with confidence in God, with faith, confidence with faith, uh, but it's something within their ability. So this time we are looking at one of the vices of magnanimity, and it's the final one that deals with the vices of excess. Because if you recall, virtues, moral virtues, deal with the golden means. Magnanimity is the golden means, the correct way of approaching a situation. Vainglory is an excess, and we will be moving on to deficiencies. So glory itself, St. Thomas points out, glory itself is good. We have the term vainglory. Glory itself is good. Glory signifies a certain clarity. St. Augustine says that to be glorified is the same as being clarified or comely. We don't usually use the word comely anymore, but it's a term that means pleasant, enjoyable, a nice glass of cold lemonade on a hot day would be comely, right? It's something pleasant. And that would be good, right? It would be good to be comely to people within our society. Right? If everybody's stressed out and panicked, and you walk in the room and everyone is at ease, like a cool breeze on a hot day, you're comely. Right? That's a good thing. Um, Thomas goes on, glory properly denotes the display of something that is homely. Now, glory means a lot more. It doesn't just mean comely, but it's kind of an interesting idea. When we think of glory, I often think of things like the trumpet blast, sit up straight, glory. But instead, glory is in some way, we relate it to comeliness, a sense of an oasis in the desert, right? A biblical image of an oasis in a desert that feeds, gives drink. Maybe I don't mean an oasis, but a spring in the desert, something covered with leaves and plants where you can get out of the sun, have something to drink. There might be some animals in this little area around the spring near the well. And this is comeliness. It goes with glory. So now, not a sin to know and to approve of one's own goodness, right? This is in some sense glory. But if you're good and you know it, it's not a vainglory. To be accurate, right? To be accurate is not a sin to be pleasant and to know you're pleasant. It is not a sin to be willing to approve one's own good works. So if you know you've done something good, somebody says, "Oh, you're such a great baker. You always make such great cakes." You don't have to say, "Oh no, they're terrible. Oh, it's not that." If you do a good job, you can say thank you, right? There's nothing uh, unvirtuous about being accurate, right? You don't seek the praise. Glory deals a lot with praise too. You don't seek the praise. If somebody praises you and it's accurate, to accept the praise, okay, right? You have to be humble about it, but to accept it's okay. That's proper glory. That's glory as it should be given. recognizing good deeds and a good person. Right? That's what glory is for. Now, vainglory is different than glory. This would be the false equivalent. Right? This is the fakeness of it. Now, vainglory then it would always be bad because it's this counterfeit version of glory, where one wants all of the praise, but they don't want the good that they're being praised for. So if a person seeks glory for which they are unworthy, it would not it should be vainglory, right? So if let's say a person wants people to think that they are powerful, rich, and really they're poor and they're just pretending and it's all on credit card debt, right? They want people to think they're rich and they're buried in debt. Right? This would be vainglory. In contrast, if you were a good business person and you made a lot of money and you were very generous with your money, that might be proper. People might properly praise you for being a good business person who uh, does good things with their money. They show liberality with their money. That would be glory. To fake it, vainglory. To receive praise from an unworthy person. Uh, bit less clear to give an example of that, but I guess this would be somebody who is praising you who is not a praiseworthy enough person that you should be listening to their advice. Um, the example I thought of this, and God forgive me for saying it because it comes off as awfully judgmental, but there was a strip club not very far from where I lived, and one of the male patrons or workers must have died, and they put up on the billboard sign for the strip club something about big picture of the guy, and God bless John, you'll be missed. Something about going home to heaven in there. Thinking, well, the person is on the sign for the strip club. They either worked there or they were a very faithful customer. But on the strip club billboard sign, um, so he's being praised, in almost a saintly way. But the one praising him is the strip club. Uh, so I think that's a good example here where you're being praised as saintly, but you have to ask, well, who is the one who's calling you a saint? If it were the bishop of the diocese or the homeless of the city, who frequently help if a person was known to the homeless for being generous. And the homeless all praise the person as a saint. Well, maybe they, as the book of Revelation says, you will be judged by the saints. Uh, they, that might be your judgment. Your judgment is coming from the homeless, but if it's coming from the strip club, maybe not. I guess same thing with a casino, something like that. On the part of a man himself who seeks glory for himself. Right? So if a person is seeking glory for themselves, then it's probably vainglory. Right? If you want a library named after you, you want some statue in a park or something like that. Well, it's not. You're not supposed to want the statue in the park. uh, it shouldn't be the goal of your actions is to get like the statue in the park. You should be aiming at doing something good, living a good life, living a virtuous life, loving God and neighbor. If you do that, uh, 9 times out of 10, you don't get a statue in the park. If you do get the statue in the park, that's great. But that's not the goal of life is to get the statue in the park. It's to live the good life. Living the good life, if somebody recognizes you for it, that's glory. That's praise. That's good. If you didn't really do anything ever good, but you still got the statue because that's what you really wanted, vainglory. Sometimes memorials in the cemetery to wonder if some of the most extravagant burial tombs are really just vainglory. Remember me is what they're yelling from their graves. Remember me. I was important once. But it's not necessarily organic, right? It's not necessarily coming from the people. It's just something they paid for. So also there is the sin of I probably shouldn't be the sin of ambition. 1 second. Okay, I have an extra slide in there left over. So vainglory is opposed to magnanimity, Article 2. That is the second one. So we are saying, is magnanimity related to vainglory? We know it's magnanimity is related to honor. What's the relationship between honor and glory? And St. Thomas points out that they're very close. Right? One who is honored for glory, and vice versa. Right? One has glory because they are an honorable person. Therefore, they're very closely connected. So if you, but both glory and honor are done with moderation. St. Thomas points out, as I just said in the last slide, if your goal should be to do honorable things, your goal should be to do glorious things. If you then receive glory and honor for doing those things, that's justified. If you are looking for the praise of glory and honor, this is things like ambition or vainglory. This is you want the praise without the work. Um, Therefore, it is inordinate, not in the proper order. Right? 2 plus 2 equals 4. Good works plus good works equals glory and honor. Right? If you just want 4, but you don't want the 2 and 2, it's not how math works. It's also not how the virtue works. Um, Action, being follows action. Action follows being. If you want to be an honorable person, do honorable things. If you want to be a glorious person, a praiseworthy person, do praiseworthy things. Right? That's the proper order due to magnanimity. Now, you can be wrong with honor, you can be wrong with glory. And that's when you put too much effort into the little things that don't matter, right? The thing is, you want the statue in the park, you want the Medal of Honor. Right? If that's the most important thing with you is that recognition, you're talking about human honors, not God's honors, not glory before God. It's just glory before men, which means nothing, right? Ultimately nothing in terms of eternity. What does it mean that you have the statue in the park? What's it going to last? 100 years before somebody tears it down, melts it down, and turns it into cannonballs? What's it? What's it worth? What's 100 years out of an eternity? Last 1,000 years. What's 1,000 years out of eternity? Nothing, right? It's nothing. Therefore, any of this desire for vainglory, desire for honors, is vanity, right? Vanity, vanity, all is vanity, like chasing after the wind. Coming from Ecclesiastes, chasing after the wind. You're never going to catch vanity, right? It's an elusive thing. Okay. Now, is vainglory a mortal sin or a venial sin? Now, often these they're almost always both. It depends on the degree. Um, they kind of lean towards mortal sin more often than not. Vainglory leans towards venial sin, all being equal, lean that way. St. John Chrysostom, quoted by St. Thomas, points out, while other vices find their abode in the servants of the devil, vainglory finds its place even in the servants of Christ. right? So I guess you could see this maybe less at the time of St. John Chrysostom, but even more throughout the history of the church. How many popes wanted to be pope because it was the most powerful position in the world. You would, you would like to think that there was no ambition to that position, but we know to the contrary that there were. That there was sometimes uh, uh, vainglory, right? People wanted to be praised, they wanted to be honored, they wanted to have these positions. Now, uh, St. Thomas points out that the venial are mortal in different ways. So, venial, uh, if the love of human glory, though it be vain, be not inconsistent with charity, then it might be a venial sin. Maybe to this degree, uh, you know, all of each of us is to become a saint, right? We're all called to be a saint. Uh, can't possibly go through everyone's mind, to live an entire life without possibly thinking, you know, perhaps canonization one day would be nice, right? Perhaps I could actually be one of those saints in the windows. Um, perhaps not you or me listening, you listening to this or me speaking, well, but uh, somebody who becomes very holy, religious, has given their entire life to God. Um, uh, well, why not, right? You've given your entire life to God. Um, do you desire canonization at all? I think it would be shocking if it never crossed through a holy person's mind even once, right? I think you probably don't likely get to the position of pope without thinking, well, maybe, right? An awful lot of popes in the last 200 years have become, um, or at least 100 years have become saints. Probably moving forward, it will be uh, more uncommon for Saint popes not to be saints than for them to become saints. Right? I think it's pretty likely when Pope Benedict XVI dies, he will be eventually canonized. I think that's probably likely, um, probably to some people's unhappiness, and for other people's unhappiness, but perhaps Pope Francis, when he dies, he would also be fairly likely to be canonized as saint. We have John Paul II politics. In the modern day, we're probably not picking people to become saints who are evil, ambitious men, right? The church is not in a stage of um, that type of ambition anymore. We tend to value holiness above power. Some people might roll their eyes at that, but I tend to think that that's where we are now. We don't have the Medici. We're in a different age. So as long as it doesn't contradict charity, right, and perhaps a little ambition doesn't hurt, right? I want to be a canonized saint someday, a bit vainglory, but if you still, if it's backed up with the authentic desire to live as a saint, then it's venial, right? Might be venial, um, probably, depending on if you have a presumption. Right? Presumption would be another problem. Now, it can be a mortal sin, and St. Thomas points out that this vainglory is seldom an offense against neighbor, it's usually an offense against God. Um, if one prefers the glory of men, even at the expense of doing something which is contrary to God, then that would be, again, a violation of charity to God. Therefore, it would be a mortal sin. So that would be a problem. So if you do everything like you live like a saint, doing all the right things, and you in the back of your mind, you kind of desire that canonization. Right? It's not, you're not doing anything contrary to God. You're doing your best. You're living consistently. Um, Now, if you're perhaps like some of these popes throughout the ages, time of Martin Luther, if the goal was to even poison your enemy in order to get into that position, um, okay, now that's contrary to God, right? If you're willing to steal or rob or pay off the cardinals in order to vote for you, okay, now you're doing something contrary. Uh, that would be mortal sin. Um, so in the examples St. Thomas gives glories in something false that is opposed to the reverence owed to God, right? Or if a man prefers temporal goods in which he glories, the person is more excited about their sports car and um, their golf clubs than they are about the Eucharist, which is often the cases that you find in upper to middle class parishes where the religion might be part of the life, you know, but the bottom line still plays a bigger role within their day-to-day life. So that would be one of these temporal goods being more important uh, than the spiritual. Now, is vainglory a capital vice? So these questions 4 and 5 really go hand in hand. So capital vices, capital things are like mothers, right? That's the terminology that we use. They are the root which spreads out into other vices. So capital vice has daughter vices that because of vainglory, other vices come about. So is vainglory a capital vice? Well, on the traditional list, it's not in there. Pride is, but vainglory isn't. Uh, Gregory the Great added in vainglory, so it gets mentioned in St. Thomas in the Summa. So pride is the queen of all vices, and vainglory is her immediate offspring. So uh, vainglory is the daughter of pride, very closely related to pride. Um, but vainglory isn't the cause of other vices the way pride is. Um, Nobody pursues pride. Pride is a cause of other vices, but it's not pursued as an end in some ways. Right? Whereas vainglory is something that people actually pursue. You know, in their mind, they might think they're pursuing glory, but what they're actually pursuing is vainglory. So in some sense, they're actually pursuing vainglory where nobody's really pursuing pride. So you can see how it affects a person in a different way. Um, right, so vainglory is an inordinate uh, desire. Right? It's an inordinate desire. One should aim for glory, but by doing things worthy of praise. Right? Not looking for the praise and then doing the actions later, but doing the acts first. So vainglory corrupts in some sense, whereas pride is as the uh, queen of all vices, kind of is more insidious. I suppose that it's more immortal in its action. Um, in some sense, it tries to replace God with the self. The ego replaces God, right, with pride, which is more uh, it's more insidious than just vainglory, which is a kind of desiring human praise more than you should. So it is slightly different. Maybe good for our discussion or our topic. Maybe mention it, what you think the difference is in the discussion below in the comments. Now, the daughters of vainglory. Now, this is really a bit complicated. So, and I don't have it fully down. You could spend a lot of time on it. But So things that are rooted in vainglory, right? The daughters of vainglory. You have things like disobedience, where a person fails to obey their superior, right? Superior asks you to do something, and you say, I'm not going to do that. Why? Because in some sense, you think that you deserve the praise, and they're not praising you enough because they're giving you a command, or you think you're above that type of work, or whatever reason you think that you're above your superior, right? So there's a type of pride in there, right? It sounds like pride, vainglory, boastfulness. If nobody else is praising you, then you praise yourself, right? Boastfulness, clearly vainglory, uh, hypocrisy, and love of novelty. St. Thomas puts together. So if you're kind of titillated, I guess, by astonished by certain lower things, right? The things that don't matter, right? It just it's a cars or something like that. Sports cars. Right? You're astonished with sports car. You're so obsessed with sports cars. It's just novelty, right? It's just a novelty. All right. If that's the astonishment you should have forgotten, you give it to sports cars. It's just love of novelty. So it's vainglory in a sense. Want to be praised for cars, and cars are car knowledge, and it's not the most important thing. Now, if it's false things, then it's hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is typically seen in the view of religions. We saw this under justice. So, if you want people to think you're holy, and you put a statue in your front yard, and you do these things, could be uh, hypocrisy, right? Um, Tension. So, why do people get into fights? Why do they quarrel with one another? Their pride is hurt, right? They want to be praised and they're not being praised. Uh, Obstinacy, too attached to your own opinion, right? You think they should be praising you. You're so brilliant. But they're not listening to you. Obstinacy, uh, and discord, right? You're not even willing to give up any of your own will. You're so certain because you should be glorified, you should be praised, and they're not doing what you've said, they're not doing what you want, uh, not willing to budge, right? So the discord. So these are all you can see how they're all kind of rooted in vainglory. Ultimately, remember, vainglory is the daughter of pride, so in some ways they're all somewhat related to pride as well. Um, So, in conclusion, glory is not a sin, but vainglory is a false sense of glory. It's a false glory, fake glory, imposter. So, that is always a sin because it's not really glory. Now, vainglory is opposed to magnanimity because magnanimity is aimed at honor, and vainglory in its proper form would be glory. And glory and honor are closely related. So because vainglory is opposed to glory, therefore it's also opposed to honor. And if it's opposed to honor, it's opposed to magnanimity. Kind of a logical connection. Um, Vainglory is sometimes a mortal sin, but more often than not, a venial sin. It becomes a mortal sin if it violates charity, like all mortal sins. But if it just is a little bit, you know, a misdirection of your attention, even if it's for a short time. It might only be a venial sin. Now, vainglory is a capital vice, meaning kind of spawns others, right? The mother of other um, vices. Uh, and the daughters, and we just went into the last slide, there are the daughters of vainglory, which are rooted in vainglory, which as vainglory is the daughter of pride, they're somewhat rooted in pride. So that's all we have here. Um, Now we're moving on next topic into the deficiencies of the deficiencies of magnanimity.